Hello, Internet people. This is Jay with webapphero. And if you're an OS X user who also uses Bash, then this video is for you. So my recent research has determined that OS X basically has a buggy implementation of Bash's startup files. And there's some historical reasons for that. If you're interested, you can read the webapphero article and click on some of the links there to dig into the discussions that I also found. But we're just going to dig in and figure out, how to fix it. So basically, I think a couple versions ago, OS X started coming with just the .profile startup file. And if you're not familiar, there are 3 startup files that are used for login shells. And those are .bash_profile, .bash_login, and .profile. And for some technical reasons, OS X primarily uses login command line sessions, login terminals. And so on my system, for example, I only had the .profile file. And let me show you some behavior that started to happen, which is what got me doing this research in the first place. So I have a shell function called path, which will list the paths in my environment variable path in alphabetical order. So that's a special shell function. You won't have that on your system. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run a command called source, which is what we often do after we edit one of our startup files. And so I'm going to source my .profile. Now that I've done that, I'm going to run path again, and you can see that I actually have duplicated path entries in my path environment variable. So my environment variable is getting muddied up, basically. So let's fix that. The steps that we have outlined in the document are what I've come up with after reading through different people's recommendations and borrowing some actual scripts from other people that we will accredit here in a second. Not a credit, but I don't know what you call that. We'll acknowledge them. How about that? Attribute them. So anyway, the first thing I wanted to do on my system was to create a .bash_profile file. So run the touch.bash profile command you can see here. Then I want to set the permissions so that the file can be read and executed. And the purpose of the .bash_profile file is going to be for bash-specific commands. So .profile will be called in this file and sourced in this file. And in .profile, we're going to keep all of the modifications to the path environment variable and anything that is going to be non-bash specific. But then inside of the .profile file, we're also going to source the .bashrc file. And inside of it, we're going to do things like aliasing and things that wouldn't cause duplicate entries to our paths to be created. And then we, down at the bottom of this document, we have this path add function, shell function, that we're adding to our .profile file. All of this might sound a little bit confusing, but if you read through the document and follow the instructions, it's pretty linear. And you may want to do the research like I did to understand better what is going on. But essentially, what the system does when you're logging in with a login shell, and as I said, most shells on OS X are login shells, the 3 files, .bash_profile, .bash_login, and .profile will be searched for in that order. And the first file that comes up will be the file that's read and the file that's executed, and the others will be ignored unless they are specifically called from within the file that is found. So that's what's happening here. And in this code, the if bracket notation is basically saying, let's test what's inside the brackets. The dash F says we're looking for a file that exists, and the file name is, the tilde is a shortcut for the home directory, and .profile is the name of the file. Then we want to source the .profile file that's found in the home directory. And so what source will do is it will run in the context of the current process. It will run the contents of the .profile file. And this is where I've chosen to do my path add, because basically this is the file where I want to be modifying my path. And this shell script was provided by Gordon Davison, and we have a link to his work in the document. And it's going to make sure that the directory exists, and it's going to add it to the path. Also checking that if there's a duplicate, if the name already exists in the path, that it will avoid creating a duplicate name. And so here you can see I've run the syntax. I'm adding a couple of directories here, dub fiddle faddle and dub fiddle fuddle. And again, instead of the tilde, this time I'm using quote $home. That's, again, a shortcut that will be expanded into the home directory. So that's the syntax that I want to use to add my paths from now on. And what I can do is go through and pretty much change the existing paths. So those were just an example. That was a test that I was working on. So if we want to see what it looks like to actually modify, it's really simple. So here I have a path, which is my scripts. I'm just going to path add space and then the path name, the path. Again, here's another one. I can path add that. And notice I don't need quotes around it, so I can path add that. I'll just go through here and let you guys kind of see how it goes. Just going through my .profile file, cleaning everything up, doing the path add, and okay, I think you guys have seen probably enough. Let me pause the video and finish this up, and I'll be right back. Okay, so basically I have wrapped up editing my .profile file, so we can kind of come back to our instructions. So you can kind of see these things are chained together. We're just going from the bash under profile to the .profile to the .bash RC. And actually the bash RC in turn runs its own test, and this is standard. It calls etc bash RC, and it sources that. So I'm going to use my .bash RC file for things like aliases, things that aren't modifying the path. If I wanted to do set clobber or no clobber for my files, I would do that in my .bash RC file. And you'll see a lot of documents that you're following online that are telling you to modify your .bash RC file and then source it, and then everything is good. And so you can now, after following these instructions, you can follow other instructions pretty much the way that they're being delivered to you. And that fixes sort of this buggy implementation. The other thing that just to point out is that you do need to change the permissions on each of these files that you create. You're probably not going to need to create your .profile file unless you just have a far different implementation than I do on your OS X system. And other than that, I think everything is pretty straightforward. Let's test it out now and see. So I'm going to open a new tab. I'm going to run my path command again. I'm going to source my .profile file, and I'm going to run my path again, and hey, everything's fixed. And because we're now calling one file from the other, so we're calling .bash rc from the .profile file, and we're going to keep our things that would affect environment variables like path out of into .profile, and other things in .bash rc. So now we can edit .bash rc and then source .bash rc when we're following those instructions from other people on the internet, and that in and of itself should keep the path from getting clobbered and these duplicate entries being created. But this wonderful little concise shell function called path add is sort of like our backup insurance policy. So if we're always modifying our path in .profile and we have the path add in the .profile file, then everything should be good. And this is all theoretical. I'm actually just starting out with this setup, so if this blows up your system, don't blame me. But theoretically, everything should work great, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you find something that works better, please let me know. And with that, bye-bye, and have a great day.